So I made a tier 2 Firestorm Vexor Navy Issue fitting that is not only easy to use, but also cheap and newbie friendly. Does it make good disc? Oh yeah, it does, and for the low cost of roughly 90 million, you can have one too. So if you want to find out how you can use it and make yourself some nice 30 to 50 million ISK power early on your own, go ahead and watch this video as we will dive right into it. And I will show you all the details about it in this video. But playing EVE alone sucks. So if you want to take part in an awesome community, fly fun ships, make something ISK, and have genuinely a good time with constantly people around you to hang out with, so come and join Suspect today and fight under the banner of our great supreme leader, me. So come and join our Discord today. Anyway, on with the video. So what exactly are we doing here? This ship is used for tier 2 Firestorms in Abyss, and trust me, it can't run tier 3 Firestorms. I tried it in tier 3 Firestorms, it didn't work. If it did, I would be talking about it. You know what they say, sometimes you just have to adjust yourself to reality, you know? Yeah, better. However, for tier 2, it works wonders, and with Firestorms having the cheapest filaments, but also the highest on average returns, it is kinda a nice way to make yourself early on some ISK. But also, at least on paper, they are the hardest filaments you can run, so before you run them, you should have already run a few filaments beforehand of other levels. But that is why I made this fitting, because it is not only easy to use, but also not very expensive, and that comes down to the ship itself. The fit itself is not very hard to use and shouldn't be skill intensive at all, being mostly meta modules and only a few Tech 2 modules. This means you shouldn't have any fitting issues. If you have fitting issues, you can actually just turn off a gun. Otherwise, you have 2 armor repairers to keep you alive, which even negates the fact that your thermal resistances are rather low, but the pure amount of HP you get back all the time is enough to keep you alive regardless of that. The guns you have give you a bit of additional damage, and the damage output of the ship itself is very high and comparable to a cheap Gila. And when it comes to drones that you're using to get most of your DPS, you want to make sure that you get faction drones because they have more HP and are less prone to dying. And they are still very cheap to get and very not skill intensive. That is why you should get faction drones even if you can use Tech 2 drones. Otherwise, this ship is pretty easy to use and the fitting itself is nothing amazing special. You just want to make sure you use your armor repairers and that you use your afterburner to actually be able to run the sides decently fast and also keep your reserves up to be less likely to be hit by NPCs. You also have a tractor beam which you can use to pull in side cages and just be able to pick up loot a little bit easier. The sides themselves are actually not very hard. When you're in them, you just want to lock up the enemy and you want to check where all the cages are. If you have any side cages that are within roughly 45 kilometers, and especially if you can be sure that the room is one of the longer ones, normally if you have a battleship or something it takes a bit longer, you can go ahead and pick up one or both of the side cages if they are close to each other. You just want to fly close to them and then just start shooting them using your railguns. Once you're within 24 kilometers, you can simply go ahead and start pulling them in while your drones are just killing everything else in the room. The side cages themselves are not necessarily like too amazing, but at least it is a bit of bonus money. And also something to do while you're just waiting while your drones are mindlessly grinding down whatever you're fighting in the room anyway. Sometimes those side cages can also be empty, and you will see it by the icon. If the icon itself is empty, you can simply ignore them because there's nothing inside. However, if the icon is filled out, there's loot inside. But that is only for the side cages. The main cages always have loot in them. In this first example, the side cage is kinda disappointing, honestly. Like, this is not a good side cage, but normally can drop like 100,000 to maybe 1 million in extra loot. So it's kind of worthwhile to pick them up if it doesn't cut into your time. And in those long battleship rooms, it kind of is like gonna take you a while anyway, simply because of how much HP those battleship bosses have. There's no way around it, so you might as well pick them up for bonus loot. Just make sure to actually cycle your armor wrappers if you need repairs, and just don't forget about it. That's kind of a mistake. You don't really want to go AFK in Abyss, that's not a good idea. I did that and I died, that's like the main way to die. The main cage itself has loot in it, and that is a big cage. In this case, it's again roughly 800,000 and a blueprint. And you shouldn't just ignore the blueprints, they can make you some bonus money as well, but not really with meta guns. It's rather about the ammo And if you maybe get a faction drops are really good in general. And yeah, in this case, we're just kind of waiting until the boss is down, so I'll mostly just cut this part out. There's like no point in just waiting. But just make sure you always keep moving and don't actually stand still, so the bosses don't apply that well to you. This generally is something very important. You can move manually by just holding Q and dragging a line, or you can just move manually by double clicking in space. Both of those work, and it makes sure you move and you don't have to approach something or orbit something. And in the second room again, it's the same gist like you saw earlier. This time it's not a boss room, it has many small NPCs, but it kinda makes it easier. When there's lots of NPCs, you want to make sure that you kill all the ones that energy neutralize you first. For example, in this case it's a fire watcher that is energy neutralizing me, so I'm getting rid of it. And also shooting with my guns at anything that is further away. If they stop shooting at you, which you'll notice by the red box around their icon not being there anymore, you want to make sure that you actually get rid of those NPCs as fast as possible, because those NPCs are actually starting to shoot your drones. Yellow boxes normally don't mean that your drones are being shot at, but you'll get a feeling of it because the HP bar will go down. And just make sure to actually recall drones to reset that aggro. If you recall them, the NPC should go back to shooting you, but they most likely will go back to shooting your drones eventually. But normally it's only like 1 or 2 NPCs. And not the whole room, so it's not that big of a deal, and you have faction drones for a reason, they survive more. In this case, the bioadaptive cage is again 500,000, so far it's 1.1 million in total from the first 2 rooms. And that is not amazing, but the average is roughly like 5-6 million. Sometimes you get lucky, but so far it's not a lucky run. And again, picking up a side cage is kinda not wrong, because in this case it's hopefully gonna help me catch up with the value, because I kinda wanna get 5 million from this. Otherwise it would be like a bad example, honestly. And I kinda don't wanna have a bad example. But this cage is 1.7 million, it's actually nice. So now we're up to 3.9 million from this, but as you can see, the loot is not that bad. And it kinda is a new play activity, so kinda to be expected. It's not endgame, but it's a good middle step as you're getting onto bigger ships and more expensive ships, and also just get a bit more experience for running it. The rogue drone room, which this is the case of, is actually pretty easy. You just kill the renewing Rodiva, which repairs the other NPCs. It doesn't actually shoot you, really, unless it gets really close. But it doesn't do a lot of damage, but it keeps the other NPCs alive. So I go for them first. I also linked the Abyssal cheat sheet in the video description as well, so you can see what each NPC is doing by just looking at a spreadsheet if you need that. It is kinda helpful, so I edited it as well. But this is the last room of this test run. I did in total actually 12 test runs, and the loot you see in the cargo hold is from 11, I believe. So it's not bad at all. I did get lucky once, so that is to be expected. But the big benefit here is that the filaments cost 1,000 ISK a piece, like 2,000 ISK, so that is basically nothing. It doesn't cut into your profits at all. You basically just pay one time for the ship, one time for the drones, and then you just keep rocking those filaments. They are dirt cheap. One tip though, buy those filaments on an alt, so people can't track you. If you buy them from people who gank Abyss runners, they might use filaments, and you buying those filaments, to try to track you down. With low tier it's less the case, but a high tier it can happen. So if you use a second character that doesn't run the sites and is just there to buy the filaments, that might actually be a good way to avoid ganks in high sec especially. It matters less in low sec or null sec, but high sec it kinda matters. And right here we're just pulling in the next cage and approaching the gate, and this one that's actually not bad, 1.2 million additionally, and that actually puts us to roughly 6 million and a cruiser blueprint. That is really not bad at all. But as you see, the sights are incredibly easy. I'm not even struggling whatsoever with tank. The drones are more worrisome, but it's just the drones. And like I said, you can actually find a... actually, you know what? Let's pick up that cage as well. It's kind of close. But you can find the fitting and the skill plan in the description, and it's kind of easy. So, not a big deal whatsoever. And you only need like 8 to 10 minutes per run. And it's pretty good ISK anyway, so... for a new player, I think this is very much a good alternative to, you know, just sticking to low tier Abyss or buying plaques to buy a bigger ship. 80 million doesn't take too long to get, even with just low tier Abyss. And it's kinda a nice step between a Gila or an Ishtar or something like that. It's just a nice middle step that you can go. And yeah, like I said, I did roughly 12 test runs. I don't remember because I got filaments back as well. But I think it was 12, and it's not bad at all. It's actually very chill, it's a very easy activity, and the Vexor Navy Issue being a Navy ship is easy to skill into and not too expensive. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe, and thank you to all my Patreon supporters for supporting me, and I hope to see you next time. And yeah, see you around, see you.